So I wanted to discuss something that I think is unique, and it's in regards to suicide. And I'm gonna kind of generalize what I believe to be the two main triggers to suicide. And the first, which is not more simplistic of how it affects the individual, but more simple to think about as to why they would do it, and that is if someone very close to them dies, um, or if they lost a job and they had their entire self-worth wrapped up in this job, and all of a sudden they feel like they have no meaning. And when it's catastrophic suicide, and that's my term that I'm choosing to call it, I think there aren't really signs, and it's harder to prevent that suicide for a lot of reasons. But what I want to focus on is what I believe to be the other type, and that's when somebody experiences depression, and you realize that their depression may lead to suicide. And that's the type that's better for me, and I don't mean for me as an individual who's experiencing it, or for the individual who experiences it. I mean for me as someone who wants to prevent suicide. And that's because we know a lot about depression. We know how to treat depression. There's a lot of science on depression. So I think people can experience long states of depression, and at some point it can lead to suicide. But we can prevent that. We can stop them. And what I want to dive into is kind of some quick things that you can assess about depression right off the bat. And I think depression is kind of a term that's thrown around these days. And one thing I want to make clear is when people say they're depressed, unless you're a clinical psychologist, it's not up to you to say whether they actually are or not. That's a diagnosis that only somebody who is certified can make. So as an average human, when you say you're sad, nobody questions you, they just say, why are you sad? So when somebody tells you they're depressed, it's not up to you whether to say they are or aren't, you just say why. It's never a manner to be taken lightly. And I think there's a lot of people that, will say they're depressed, and others will say they're faking it. And I don't think the people that are depressed should be mad at them. It's just them being ignorant, and if you look up the definition, it's to the T of that. They don't know, they have not ever experienced that, so they don't have the capacity to feel how you feel in that moment. And what I want to say to the people that say they're depressed are faking it is to practice empathy and maybe some small amounts of sympathy. And when I say small amounts of sympathy, I have another idea that's kind of separate from what I want to talk about right now, but I don't believe in giving 100% sympathy to someone who says they're depressed and they want to stay in that state. And that's for reasons that I said we can discuss later, maybe today. But 100% you should practice empathy, and empathy is trying to understand why that person might feel that way. And kind of the second half of this that I wanted to discuss is when people say they are depressed, they usually kind of make a self-assessment on their self without really assessing their self. And what I mean by that is really three things. Okay, so if you say you're depressed, one thing I would ask you is, do you have normal routines that you practice throughout your day? So what you'll hear a lot, and it might sound cliche to you, is when you're depressed, someone might tell you to make your bed. And that's not because your bed has anything to do with your depression level. It's because routines are good for humans. And something like making your bed happens when you first wake up. So you start your day with a routine, which happens to be good for you for the rest of the day. So, your routine could be to wake up at 10 a.m. and eat Cheez-Its and watch SpongeBob. And while I don't care what your routine is, I think it's important to have one. So if you wake up at 10 one day, don't wake up at 11 the next day, and then 2 o'clock, and then 12 o'clock, and then 10 o'clock again. Make it 10 o'clock every day. And, maybe you can have something different for breakfast and Cheez-Its. But, try to at least wake up at the same time. And something like making your bed is really great. And, it's not a focus on what you do that's your routine. It's just you wake up and have a routine. So that would be the first thing that I would look at when assessing yourself, or maybe if you are in the position to assess someone else that's in depression. And number two, I would say, a lot of times people that are depressed are so focused on this rain cloud of depression, they forget to look at the small things. And one of the small things is diet. We forget a lot of times about how we're eating, and it's possible that some people are eating 8 pizza rolls and they're wondering why they feel anxious and they have low energy and they feel depressed, and they also don't have a routine, so they have no routine, and then they're eating 8 pizza rolls in a day and maybe a hot dog from Quick Trip and drinking Mountain Dew, and they're wondering why their body doesn't feel right. And maybe to somebody that has a normal routine and normal eating habits, that seems absurd, but to somebody that's going through depression and kind of focused on the rain cloud, and per se not the little things that happen to create the rain cloud, that might be overlooked. And the third thing I would say that's really important is sleep. And a lot of times people will sleep for like 2 hours, or maybe 14 hours, or maybe like 5 hours, and take a nap in the middle of the day every day. So a lot of times it's all three things. So when they wake up, they won't make their bed or any other normal routine, take a shower when you first wake up, or like I said, eat Cheez-Its and watch SpongeBob. Okay, and then on top of that, they have an awful diet. And then on top of that, their sleep is irregular. And they wonder why their body and why their mind doesn't feel right. And it's easy to take what we have for granted when it comes in regards to our body. And when I say that, what I mean is, it is a machine. You don't not charge your phone and wonder why it turns off, or wonder why it has a low battery. You charge it because you know it needs it. And all three of these things kind of charge you mentally and physically. The routine kind of charges you mentally to start thinking of what you need to do, and the diet and sleep kind of charge your body physically. So anybody that says they are depressed, or if somebody tells you they're depressed, I'm the kind of person that kind of likes, knocking the quick things off. So if all three of those things are nailed down, and you have routines, and you have a good diet, and you sleep really well, and you're depressed, now you kind of move into the second level, in my opinion. But if someone says, I don't feel right, I'm sad, I have low energy, and 2 out of those 3 things are off, then maybe it's a quick fix. And I feel like in today's world, a lot of people like the quick fixes. So it's worth looking at, especially when it comes to how you feel as a human. And if you can look at something as simple as routine, diet, and sleep, because those are super easy to measure. You can measure those things in a couple days. You can analyze them and know within a couple weeks if you change them, if you feel better. I think that's worth looking into. And to the people who are depressed, I know that shit is real. I know it's got to be awful. And like I said earlier, to anyone who says that, well, why are you so depressed? You can't understand it, but you can practice empathy, okay? And I'm not saying every single person that says they're depressed is actually depressed, but it's not up to you to decide that. You have to treat everyone, as if they are depressed. And I give you these 3 things because I think it's easy for some people who are looking for a reason to feel bad to knock those 3 things off and feel better. And I think it's really important to, when you go to the doctor, what's the first things they do when you say you're sick? They take your blood pressure. They look inside your ears with, I wish I knew the term, and then they look in your throat. They take your temperature, and this is kind of all I'm saying before your diagnosis. If you see your body, kind of like a doctor looks in your throat, something's kind of inflamed, and then you have a fever. Well, that's 2 out of 4 things when you walk in that they quickly assess, and now they pretty much know. And that's all I'm trying to give you, is these quick tools. And I think they're very important, and I thought it was important enough to discuss with you, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.